Good afternoon. Welcome to The Picture Show, Bipsy's weekly movie review half hour. I'm your host, Danny Foots, and with me this week is guest host Michael Jennings. This week, Michael and I are reviewing White Boy Rick. Directed by the much lesser-known Jan DeMange, White Boy Rick introduces the world to Richie Merritt in the lead role alongside Academy Award winner Matthew McConaughey. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Shoot the cuffs. No. Commit to it. Shoot them. Bam. Yeah, you see the bookends right there? Shows you you're big time, baby.
You want to move weight? You come to me.
You feeling it?
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Would you believe a 15-year-old kid was working for the federal government?
But he was.
That was a trailer to White Boy Rick, the movie we're reviewing this week. With me is Michael Jennings. Hello.
Hello there.
So White Boy Rick was directed by Jan DeMange, who I had to look up. I didn't know that he had any other movies, and he didn't. He has done a few things on TV for the last 10 or 11 years, but this is his directorial debut, which is crazy to think of for the impact that I thought this movie would have. I saw Matthew McConaughey, but he is literally the only person in the movie who I've ever seen before.
Same here.
Everybody else that's in the movie, there's 7 actors. It was their first time being in a movie alongside Richie Merritt, who plays the lead character of Rick Wersch, which is White Boy Rick. This movie cost $29 million to make, which seems really cheap and seems like it would have a high overhead. Since its release, it has only made $11 million. So it's about $20 million in the hole. So this is what we would consider a bust.
Yeah.
Its ratings, the first week it came out on IMDb, went from a 7.7 down to a 5.6. And Rotten Tomatoes dropped from 82 down to 60%.
Wow.
Which is really surprising because I enjoyed this movie for its lack of star power.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I thought all the acting was really good, especially considering that you only knew one of them.
To see people for the first time and the only time I've seen them at all, it all flowed together really well. And this seems like a very easy movie to do wrong.
For sure.
Biopics that are about drug-related stuff. Blow pretty much set the standard. And if your movie's not on that level, then it kind of falls below that, which this one does. But Matthew McConaughey, I don't want to say he saves the movie, but he's pretty involved in pulling everybody back in.
For sure, yeah.
The opening scene to this movie, and this is my only beef with the movie, is the way we're introduced to the family. Is Matthew McConaughey and his son coming home. The daughter is with her boyfriend. They go to kick the boyfriend out. And then the grandparents are in the street, which I thought was kind of weird, but you find out they live across the street from them.
Right, yeah.
So for the placement of everybody, that seemed kind of lazy. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't just have them be somewhere else, but I did look it up. They did actually live across the street from them, so that wasn't making it lazy. But how they introduced it in the movie to just get all of the main characters in that little 30-second window, I thought that was kind of a lazy way to introduce us to everybody we'd see for the rest of the movie.
For sure, and I think that tells a lot about the movie, because I think for the most part the movie's pretty lazy. Because
it is.
Yeah, I didn't think they did that great of a job telling the story.
The adaptation that they are making was as straightforward, I thought, as it could have been. And they didn't really glorify the drug trafficking like I thought they would. Like, the trailer led me to believe this would be far more based on the drugs.
Right.
Which it had hints of it throughout, and that's kind of the problem with everything, but it focused more on the family's retribution and coming back to reality and kind of everybody evening out.
Right, and I think that was a smart move on the movie, because you go in expecting one thing, you get something completely different. And that actually was my favorite aspect of the movie, was the family aspect, which is probably a good thing considering that was most of the movie.
Right, and so in this movie, I mentioned there were 7 actors who had never been in a movie before. Rapper YG even has a cameo as part of Curry's gang. And a really funny fact that I recognized a few of the places in the movie because my father is from Cleveland, Ohio. This movie takes place in Detroit, Michigan, but the entire movie was shot in downtown Cleveland. So I recognized a few of the things. I thought that was kind of something that was missing. I guess I just don't know how strong the Detroit film industry is, but I would have assumed that they could have it would have been just as much or cheaper to film in Michigan with this $30 million budget. So that was kind of I don't know. I mean,
Strange.
I know L.A. has been 1,000 different places before, but Cleveland and Detroit are right next to one another.
Right.
I thought the production not being there was really strange. So, like I was saying, the drug aspect of the movie, we're not even introduced to that. Initially, we find out that Matthew McConaughey's character, who is Rick Sr., is a arms dealer. He sells cheap end AK-47s and revolvers and stuff like that to local gangs, and that is what leads them to get to the drugs. He sells to a gang, which is Curry's gang, and Curry's gang then in turn buys the silencers from them, and that eventually gets Rick into the circle of people that are going to eventually get him caught up in the drug world. And through the drugs, I mean, do you think that the movie focused too little, just right, or too much on the drugs as far as the trailer went? Because the trailer, we thought we were seeing a different movie when we both went. We had said that.
Right, yes.
And it was just, it wasn't what we were expecting. How do you think the drug aspect of the movie was portrayed?
I feel like the drug parts of the movie, I think they were well done. I just feel like they didn't focus on it enough. I feel like the whole movie was I thought it was paced very weird. They didn't focus on certain aspects of the movie enough, and I feel like that was one aspect when he was dealing the drugs or when he was coming up in that world, in the drug world. I feel like they didn't focus on that enough, considering that was such a big part of who he was.
Yeah, and for the first time when he meets the Kingpin, which is a man named Art, he meets him, and they have like 15 seconds on camera where they discuss a little bit of business, and then they totally sidetrack it with Brenda, who is the girl at the party that Rick hooks up with and eventually has a baby with down the road. They focus so much more on that for the foreshadowing instead of the drugs, and that guy ends up being, the drug dealer Art, ends up being the big connection in the movie. I thought they just danced around it too much, and I mean, I don't think this movie earned its R rating, almost.
For sure, I did. I wouldn't even known it was rated R if had it.
And if there wasn't any drugs in it at all, there's no way it would have been R. I feel like that's the only thing that made it that, and they kind of did the story around that. The gang leader, John Curry, who is also one of the people I was talking about, this is his first movie. He's played by Jonathan Majors. In the movie, he is the stem that connects to Rick for why he eventually gets caught up has to be the informant for the FBI. So Jonathan is sold guns by Rick Sr. They use it in a gang war, and that connection gets back to Matthew McConaughey, who tells the cops nothing and denies it, and they eventually corner Rick. You know, they pick him up in that scene after he is with Brenda.
Yes.
They pick him up, throw him into a car, and they basically tell him, we are going to charge your father with this distribution and the murders if you don't help us sell drugs and buy drugs from Curry and Art.
Right.
And in that part of it, do you think, so I thought it was so sudden how they did it.
Yes.
As soon as he met the drug lord, the next scene when he's leaving that party, the FBI gets him and picks him up. I thought that was very lazy because the reality of it is there were a few months that had gone by,
right,
according to the story. So while it was true to it, they definitely were doing the Hollywood crunch to put everything within the 2 hours.
For sure. I agree. I thought that part was lazy as well. I feel like they could have done it a lot differently. Maybe, you have to streamline things in movies from real life. So.
And they streamlined it with a cliche, though, which is what I think I don't like about it. I would have rather him been in the station, something, but they just drive up on him, tell him to get in. He doesn't hesitate at all.
Right.
He gets in and goes. And so then you have to, that's just how the movie evolves, and everything that happens before it that's not Brenda, they just kind of push to the side.
Yeah, I felt I had a hard time. They introduced these characters and made them feel like they were going to be important characters,
right,
and then I couldn't even remember their names.
Exactly. Yeah, so. I only remembered Nug because Nug is the one who eventually comes back into the house and shoots him.
Right.
We are going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll have Netflix and DVD, and we'll discuss the rest of White Boy or Rick. I'm here with Michael Jennings. Stay tuned.
Have an interest in robotics and learning how things work? Do you enjoy working with your hands or working with machines? At Bossier Parish Community College, you can prepare for the new breed of industrial careers, combining the fields of mechanical, electrical, and programmed automation. By acquiring the skills at Bossier Parish Community College, you'll earn an associate's degree in advanced manufacturing and mechatronics, and become workforce ready for today's high-demand, high-income manufacturing jobs. To learn more, call us at 318-678-6000.
I'm Adam Stampley with this week's Netflix and DVD picks. Let's get right into it. First off, we have Lilo and Stitch, starring the voices of Tia Carrere and David Chase. A Hawaiian girl adopts a pet who turns out to be an alien fugitive. Next up, we have Happily Never After, which stars the voices of Sarah Michelle Gellar and Sigourney Weaver. When an alliance of evildoers tries to take over a fairy tale land, Ella and friends band together to become the leaders of the resistance. Next up, we have Quincy, starring Quincy Jones. An intimate look into the life of icon Quincy Jones, a unique force in music and popular culture for 70 years. Jones has transcended racial and cultural boundaries, and his story is woven into the fabric of America. Next up, we have Equalizer 2, starring Denzel Washington. When his longtime friend is murdered, Robert McCall comes out of retirement working as a security guard to moonlight as a vigilante. Next up, we have Incredibles 2, starring the voices of Craig T. Nelson and Holly Hunter. In a turn of events, Bob Parr is left to care for the kids while Ellen comes into her own as Elastigirl. Next up, we have Scooby-Doo and the Gourmet Ghost, starring the voices of Bobby Flay and Giadelli De Laurentiis. The gang takes their van to New England and its historic colonial districts to investigate the hauntings occurring at a state-of-art culinary resort. That was it for this week's Netflix and DVD picks. I'm Adam Stampley. Let's get back to the picture show.
Welcome back to the Picture Show. I'm Danny Foots here with Michael Jennings. We're reviewing White Boy Rick today. So we've gone over kind of the story, and I think it's the same thing all the way throughout this movie. When we are introduced to something, we expect it to, be more integrated into the movie.
Yeah, we expect it to be an important part of the movie.
And especially when they do the party at the beginning when he meets the drug dealer. They have a party. They introduce you to about 8 or 9 people that are in the gang, and then you only see 2 of them for the rest of the movie.
Right.
That's what this movie did as far as, I think, portraying a story poorly. Is they brought in everybody, but it's a movie, so they couldn't really focus on it, like say how a TV show could go back and tell you some character development. This didn't. Everybody that we saw with Rick, it made it feel like it was going to continue with Rick, and that just didn't happen. Even Brenda. Brenda is in 2 scenes, but she has a child with him.
Yes, very important in Rick's life.
And they have it at the very beginning and the very end of the movie. So I just think the structure wasn't done in the best way. However, all of this I am overlooking and will continue to overlook because I do think Matthew McConaughey was lights out in this movie.
He killed it in this movie. He did a very good job.
Interesting. So since Dallas Buyers Club, which I didn't know Matthew McConaughey had in him, I wouldn't think something like this would be in his wheelhouse, especially to have nobody around him for the star power to lean on. But he took the role on very well, and I particularly love the transitions of his character. In the beginning, he's all about doing the drug dealing, and then he really wants to get his daughter back together. They actually have a great scene. One of the better scenes in the whole movie is when both Ricks go get Dawn, the daughter, out of the trap house when she's just absolutely strung out, and they lock her in the room for the detox.
Very well
I
done.
thought that part of the movie was so strong that maybe they put so much into that scene that they didn't do anything for the rest of the movie.
Maybe had the rest of the movie been as well done and been as emotional, like as emotionally connecting as that scene, the movie would have been phenomenal. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they just exhausted everything on that one scene.
And even for that scene, I know there was only a couple other people in the theaters, but it got really uncomfortable when he picked her up and he goes to pull her out and she's like grabbing on the walls and all that. And that, to me, I thought was going to be like the climax of the movie, and then they were going to get into the drug dealing right after that, which they did. But as soon as they start doing a drug dealing scene, it does what I hate the most in movies and does a flash forward 7 months.
Yes, it was almost like it was 2 different movies with nothing connecting them without the part where he was coming up dealing the drugs. And the movie suffered because of that. I feel like it was... That messed with the pacing of the movie. It was 1 hour and 50 minutes, but it felt like it was 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, and when we got to that point, too, when it just says 7 months later, we are led to believe that there has been absolutely no struggle, that they have just been selling drugs fine, and maybe 5 or 6 minutes after it does that flash forward, he gets arrested.
Yeah,
And so it seemed like, you're right, for an hour and 50 minutes, they put in a lot of stuff that they did not touch on in the end, like meeting all of the friends and all of the drug lord's friends, and even when it showed him going out getting clothes and jewelry, that's not really the come-up part of the story I was interested in. I thought there was going to be more hardships.
For sure.
And they made it seem like once he decided he wanted to sell drugs, that's totally fine, and
he did it.
there's no problem. I mean, the scene when it comes back, it shows him pulling up in the Mercedes. He's got a gold necklace on. He walks up to the house, and their house is finally clean. Matthew McConaughey doesn't look like an alcoholic. It was such a huge jump that I think it hurt how I felt about the end of the movie. At that point, I just wanted it to end because I missed so much of the story. It was like I fell asleep almost.
Yeah, it was very poorly done. It was it was just a very lazy way to do that, to just skip probably the most important part, other than when he gets arrested, most important part of his life. I feel like had the movie been 10 or 15 minutes longer, but you'd have had that if you'd have had him coming up, the part where he was dealing drugs and coming up in that world, but then just streamlined the end a little.
Yeah, they could have done, even a montage would have done it a little bit of justice.
Yeah, 3 or 4 minutes.
But to do nothing at all and to just have us assume that they're fine, and that's the thing, you start thinking, oh, everything is good, so where's the story going now? And immediately he gets arrested. And that, to me, the movie was waiting to have that happen, because after he gets arrested, the entire movie is about the family becoming and wanting to do better, which, for what the movie was sold as in the trailer, I would expect it to end at the arrest.
For sure, or at least, yeah, I feel like it should have ended at the arrest too. I feel like they set up so many different things and they tried to do so many different things, and they couldn't succeed on doing one because they focused on doing so many different.
Right, and I think they were pulling from the actual story, since this is based on a true story. They also showed the child who was shot in the drive-by at the house, and for what it's worth, the scene is maybe 60 seconds, and it seems really important to the characters involved at the time, but nothing comes from that, and they use that as the little nugget to connect him getting shot by Nug, which I thought was a weird connection because they never even go after the guy who they meant to kill again, which, okay, that's just a loose end.
Yeah, there were so many great scenes, just phenomenally just well-done scenes in the movie, acted well. Everything about them was great, but they never followed through with those scenes.
Yeah, we had so much setup and no punchlines, and the way it was edited was we were just supposed to assume how it went for a huge amount of characters that I know nothing about other than, of course, what they showed us on screen. So I think if we would have cut out probably 5 or 6 people and just made the main cast of 5 or 6 who we see first, the movie would have been able, one, to tell the true story for Rick, but it also wouldn't have had to branch off to give you these subplots because everything else wasn't done well. Right.
This movie was bogged down by subplots.
Right.
It really hurt it.
I mean, we see the grandparents initially, we see the boyfriend straight out the gate. When he goes to the party to meet the drug dealers, not only do we meet one drug kingpin, we meet 2. We meet his whole crew, and that's fine if you're going to do something with them. Right. I hate knowing characters just for the time they're on screen and then never again. Even Nug, who plays a significant role because he shoots him.
Right.
Before that though, he's next to nothing. He's just with him. And they didn't work on their friendship because that was a huge betrayal. And they didn't touch on their friendship at all enough to feel the pain. I knew just because we had been watching the movie, but certainly they needed to work on their dynamic to make that scene more impactful because that kind of shapes the rest of the movie.
For sure. And the scene where Tug shoots Rick, phenomenally well done.
People jumped. We were shocked.
It was incredibly well done, but imagine how much better it would have been had they focused on him and Tug's relationship.
Well, exactly. And I love that part because he leaves him there laying down, and then he's just kind of looking out. So that was a great way to end it. It just didn't put it together well. Right. When we come back from the break, we're going to have this week's Friday Flick Pick for you, hosted by Sarah Patterson. Stay tuned, and we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Chris with this week's Friday Flick Pick. This week we've chosen the new Eli Roth film starring Cate Blanchett and Jack Black, The House with a Clock in Its Walls. Louis Barnevelt, after losing his parents, is sent to Michigan to live with his uncle Jonathan. He discovers his uncle is a warlock and enters a world of magic and sorcery. But this power is not limited to good people. Louis learns of Isaac Izzard, an evil wizard who wanted to cause the apocalypse so that he could see what happens afterwards. To do this, he constructed a magical clock with black magic. As long as it exists, it will keep ticking, counting down to doomsday. He died before he could finish the clock, but he hid the clock in his own house where Uncle Jonathan now lives. Now Louis and Jonathan must find the clock before it's too late and before Isaac's wife, Selena, gets to it. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Last stop. Louis, I'm your Uncle Jonathan.
Are you wearing a robe?
It's a kimono. Here we are. Home sweet home.
You're Louis, I presume. How was your trip?
This old hag is my neighbor.
I'm relieved to see you didn't inherit your uncle's freakishly oversized head.
My God, did that withered purple skeleton just speak? You'll see, it's quite different here. Have a look around. You're perfectly safe.
That's safe.
As long as it's fed. Do you know what a warlock is, Louis?
A boy witch.
I think they're a little more than boy witches.
Are you saying that you're a warlock? Please teach me, please, please.
Okay, have it your way. I can give you the right books, teach you the right spells, but that last 1%, that's up to you.
I don't want the creepy little runt. Think I want him? Lucky shot.
You've told Louis everything?
Well, not everything.
Do you hear them ticking?
This house used to be owned by another warlock.
He's very wicked, very powerful.
He left a hidden clock in the walls. We don't know what it does, except something horrible. Three gongs. Last time it was 4. What happens when it gets down to 1?
Nothing good, that's for certain.
We have to destroy the clock. So creepy.
You can't do this alone. I can help you. You want to see some real magic? I'll show you.
Shall we?
God, I hate pumpkins.
Did you see that?
Well, that was it for this week's Friday Flick Pick. I'm Christopher Hale. Now let's get you back to the picture show.
Welcome back to the Picture Show. We're wrapping up our review of White Boy Rick. So, Michael, what was your absolute favorite part of this movie? The part that every movie has something that somebody loves and it's got something that somebody hates. What did you love?
I love the part where he went to meet his daughter for the first time. I feel like that scene was incredibly well done.
And it was great to have an ending that had some content to it as well, because everything around that was kind of.
For sure, because everyone's performance in that scene was great, but especially McConaughey's. But like you said, he really did carry this movie, and he carried that scene.
And that was one of his biggest transformations in the movie, because they're like lovable, horrible people,
right?
For the most part.
Yeah.
So when you get to the end and you see him have that genuine emotion, and I think had Matthew McConaughey in real life not had a kid of his own, I don't think he would have been able to bring that to that scene.
For sure.
And what I also don't like about I love that scene, but I don't like about it is they bring Brenda back just for that part.
Yeah.
She was part of the 7-month gap where we didn't know anything. So I really just wish they would have focused more on Rick's life instead of the stuff around it. So if that was your favorite part, what was your least favorite?
I don't think I have just one least favorite part of the movie overall, but my least favorite part of the movie was just how lazy it was. They introduced so many different things they introduced enough things to make it a 2.5-hour movie, but crunched it down into an hour and 50 minutes, and in doing that, they took away so much story, and the movie was boring.
And I think, and that's probably my fault with it too, I think the script was really good individually. Once it got all put together and they storyboarded it, I don't think it translated over the way they wanted to. I think that Jan de Mange literally thought people want 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which is what he did. But then maybe it was just to cut it down for studio time. The parts they're missing are so significant as opposed to the parts they kept. They have a huge 6-7 minute scene when he goes and meets the drug dealers for the first time, which none of those characters we see again except for 2, and it's in very small capacities. So I just think they missed on what we needed as an audience versus what we wanted as an audience, and we did not need what they showed us. That being said, I think my favorite part of this movie, and this is just from the technical side of it, to have this many actors, this is their first movie, they have obviously never worked with anybody of Matthew McConaughey's star power, but everybody on screen looked like they belonged there.
For sure.
There was nobody that stood out more so. I mean, McConaughey, just because amongst those people, he's the one that you know, but nobody was too far left, too far right. They all kind of played that role, and for that part of it, I really can appreciate the art side of it.
Yes.
Well, that's going to do it for us for this week. For Michael Jennings, I'm Danny Foots. Tune in next week when I'll be back hosting with guest host Sarah Patterson as we review the latest reboot in the Predator franchise.